I've got the Benchmade mini-presidio and the Benchmade Presidio Ultra here, an EDC size and an EDC plus size knife. And I've also talked in the past about why these two sizes of knives are the ones that I carry, use, and purchase most often. But today, we're going to talk about why much smaller knives totally rock. Hey my friends, this is Late Boy Scout, and I'm here today to put a name to a category of knives that a lot of you guys really like, and I like too. The Sub-EDC category of folding knives. Let's begin by trying to define this category of knives, and this is probably going to vary depending on who you are, what your preferences are, what your capacity is to carry a knife, and so forth. I'm going to really speak about what my idea is about this category of knives. The way I look at the Sub-EDC category, this is the size and weight of knife and type of knife that you can carry virtually anywhere. Now, when I say virtually anywhere, I mean, obviously there are some places that will not allow you to carry a knife, such as airplanes, unfortunately, and maybe federal buildings or other places like that. In those situations, obviously, we're not talking about carrying these knives. But in virtually every other situation where it's perfectly legal to have a knife with you, yes, absolutely, this is the type of knife that almost in any other circumstance, it would be very, very inconvenient to have a knife on you, but this is the type of knife that is still quite convenient to have on you. And I'll explain why that might be as we go and describe some of these knives and describe the category a little better. What it basically comes down to for me is size and weight. When you get down to a certain size and weight, then you've entered the Sub-EDC realm. And it doesn't matter if it is simply a folding knife, liner lock folding knife like this Buck Vantage Small, or perhaps it's even a multi-tool like the Leatherman Squirt PS4. This is truly a knife that I can have with me absolutely everywhere. As long as I have a pocket. I don't even need a pocket, to tell you the truth. I could easily put some sort of a lanyard on here, maybe even just a little bit of paracord, throw this around my neck, and have this on me with no pockets whatsoever. And I've got some capabilities, some very minimal capabilities, but some capabilities. And what are some of these situations where a Squirt PS4 might be the absolute most you could carry? And perhaps you would put it around your neck or in a very, very small pocket. Well, I see some of those situations as, for instance, going to the gym. Or maybe you're dressed in your PJs. I don't know where you happen to be, maybe around your house. Or you're going to the beach or to a pool. And you think, you know what, for what I'm doing, it would still be really nice to have a knife. Or perhaps you're just a knife loyalist and you just don't want to go anywhere without some type of knife. Yeah, in totally minimal dress situations, something like the Squirt PS4 could still be with you 100% of the time. I would put the Victorinox Cadet in that category as well. For as light and as small as it is, you could absolutely do the same thing with this Victorinox. Have not just the capabilities of that little non-locking knife, but also the all the other things that come with it, which is, you got a little nail file, you got some drivers on there, and so forth. You get some capabilities with you that you can truly have with you pretty much anywhere. Barring minimal dress situations, we could also talk about really formal dress situations. Perhaps you're dressed in a tuxedo and maybe putting something in your pocket that is the size of an EDC plus knife just is not going to work given what the activity is, given the way that, what you're going to be doing, how you're going to be dressed. Even an EDC size knife will just feel a little too inconvenient, but perhaps something as small and lightweight as the s.o.g Flash 1 will feel right at home in that activity. In that case, you've entered the Sub-EDC realm, and wouldn't it be nice to have something very, very small that you can bring along? If we get out of particular dress situations and we just want to talk about standard EDC philosophy, something where you're talking about just having a knife with you on an everyday basis, when and why would you have a Sub-EDC size knife? Something that is 2 inches, 2.5 inches, somewhere in that neighborhood, maybe even less. Something that is 2 ounces, 2.5 ounces, maybe even less than that. When and why would you need to have a knife or want to have a knife that size? In many cases, it may be because you plan on carrying something considerably larger. Now this isn't a huge knife, the Spyderco Manix 2, lightweight. It's not huge. It's roughly as large as I go. But let's say you wanted to have this knife on you, but you didn't want to be able to, or you didn't want to have to pull it out to use it for all your utility tasks. Maybe, in that case, having a sub-EDC knife for those small, light-duty utility tasks would be worth having. You use this for all those types of cutting tasks, those really small tasks. You hang on to this one for when you really need it for some hard work or some dangerous work, whatever that work might be. So that's one philosophy we can talk about as we talk about sub-EDC knives. They could be paired with larger knives, be the utility knife, the other one is the defensive or emergency knife. But beyond that, what else would we use a small knife like this for, a sub-EDC knife for? It could also very easily be a kit knife. In this case, the Kershaw Shuffle has some multi-use capabilities. It's also got what could be a driver here on the end, and I've actually used that as a screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, and it works really nicely. And a cap lifter as well. So you've got a little bit of multi-use capability with a lot of these knives. Not necessarily all the ones that are left here on the table, but when you get into that sub-EDC category and you're talking about some of those multi-tool type knives, you could definitely say, you know what, I'm going to go with something small and little, easy to carry, and it's got multi-uses. When you dedicate a knife to a kit that has some of those capabilities, man, it's pretty nice. And that means that the size of whatever that kit is can be very small because the knife that's included in it is also very small. I think one of the most important and valid reasons for us to have this size of a knife is for those of us that live in jurisdictions where it's just not legal to carry something over 2 inches or over 2.5 or over 3 inches, whatever the case might be. If you live in an area like that, but you want to have something of use on you, some kind of a knife, some kind of a cutting tool, then clearly the sub-EDC category of knives is going to be far more valuable and useful to you than almost any other knife. And that's definitely a reason why you want to consider owning some of these very small knives. Now, I would say that there are a number of EDC sized knives that kind of straddle the fence between EDC and sub-EDC. Here's the Kershaw Leak, and I'd say that kind of straddles the fence for me, especially when you compare it against something like the Kershaw G10 Hawk, which is roughly the same blade length and size. It's a much skinnier knife, okay, in a lot of dimensions there, and lighter weight. I would put this in the sub-EDC category because it does kind of fall off the fence into that area, where it's just so light and so thin and so easy to slip into your pocket that it almost straddles the fence, but for me, it falls over into sub-EDC. Another knife that kind of straddles the fence for me is this one right here, the Benchmade 707 Sequel. This knife is a great EDC knife and a very, very small one. And if we compare it in size to, well, we can put it next to the Opinel number 6, which, again, very similar in blade length. I would say that the Benchmade 707 is a much tougher knife, and that's probably why I would put it in EDC, not sub-EDC. But it does straddle that fence. So you've got some of those knives that are fence straddlers that feel like they could fit in one category or the other, and it's just up to you and your preferences to decide whether this becomes that backup utility knife or that standard everyday carry knife. When we talk about sub-EDC and some of the light utility that they're going to be assigned to, we can also say that most of them don't always have to lock, such as the case with the Bird Turn knife. I just love this knife as a sub-EDC. Man, it's just so convenient and fun to hold and play with and carry. Super lightweight, very minimal, just G10 scales, no liners whatsoever. Totally tough and going to get the job done in those small task situations. I just love it for sub-EDC. We could also talk about Spyderco Grasshopper in that role. Very small, very light, very easy to use in small, detailed kind of situations. Really good for that. We don't have to stick to non-locking, of course. We've got the Kershaw OD2, if I'm not mistaken. That is the OD2. I get it mixed up sometimes between the OD1. But that thing has got a very fast deployment. And yes, it does have a decent lockup with that liner lock. We could also talk about super fast deployment and how that is a cool feature on some of these sub-EDCs, particularly on this Boker mini-kalashnikov with that auto. Man, that is nice. I really like that feature on a Sub-EDC, something that I'm going to either carry around the house in my pajamas, and I've done that many times, or carry as that sort of backup utility knife to back up my larger EDC knife. It's very, very convenient. Whip it out very quickly, put it away very quickly, very easy to do, and you know, it adds so much to your capabilities during the day. You could also say that about the Kershaw Scallion. Very, very quick, spring assisted, right in that size. Some people can consider this an EDC one, and I would say this is almost a fence straddler right here. For me, it falls on the side of Sub-EDC for sure, though. I also really like the G10 Cat from Spyderco as a Sub-EDC size knife. It's hand filling, it's palm filling, and it gets some really decent work done while being extremely light and very easy to carry in virtually any situation. And that's really what it comes down to, guys. When we talk about really small knives, we're talking about things that we can have with us pretty much all the time. Virtually any situation, we can have these on us comfortably. Now, some of you will say that about much, much larger knives. Good for you. For me, I really like having small knives as an option for those situations where larger ones, even the smaller EDCs, just don't feel comfortable. Guys, that's my brief philosophy video and discussion on the subject of small knives, what I would classify and call the Sub-EDC category. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you got something out of this and enjoyed it. I'm the Late Boy Scout. We'll see you later. So what makes this an EDC and this an EDC Plus? To me, it's the overall dimensions. Okay, not simply the weight, not simply the blade length or the handle length, but the overall dimensions of it.